The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Last full football weekend of the year. 2 games tomorrow, 2 games on Sunday, and if you are so inclined, the national championship game on Monday. Now, I'm into it this year because my son graduated from Indiana, loves Indiana sports, Indiana football, went to the 2 playoff games. I'm interested, but after a full football weekend of the NFL, how much are you going to be up for staying up on Monday night to watch a game? Something that college football has to wrestle with. But in the meantime, we got plenty of football, and that's good. We'll talk about that, and we will talk about the new stadium, which has some aflutter with the pictures that were released yesterday, the artist rendering of what it's going to look like once it opens in 2030. Lots of reaction to it. I saw a lot of the TV coverage yesterday, and, I would say, as you look at it, other than the fact that it's not open air, just like the good old days of RFK, and that it even doesn't have a retractable roof. In the modern scheme of things, this is about what you could hope for. It looks a lot like RFK from the outside with the columns. It lines up with the monuments, and I talked about this yesterday. I don't know how the overhead shot is going to look now with the roof over the place, but back in the day, Jack Kent Cooke used to talk about watching on Monday Night Football and seeing what was a blimp shot, I guess it would be a drone shot now, a blimp shot of the stadium at night lit up with the monuments lit up, and what a beautiful picture that was. He used to say, well, yeah, we're not that far away in Landover, so we're still going to be able to have that. No, it really wasn't the same. And he didn't even call it Landover. It was Raljon, named for his 2 sons, Ralph and John. And in maybe the best line that Tony Kornheiser ever wrote, he said, it's a good thing his sons weren't named Pete and Ennis. But anyway, no, that never really stuck as a name. It was Landover. It remains Landover. It's going to stay Landover until 2030, until the new place opens up. Scott Abraham, Channel 7 last night, had on Mark Rippon, who he didn't play, I would say, in the 2 biggest championship games that were played at that stadium. They played, what did they play? 4 of them over the years. Wow. They played, 3 of them. 2 of them against Dallas. And I think more people would remember the one in 1983 where Danny White got knocked out of the game and Darryl Grant picked off the pass and took it in the end zone. And what a great celebration that was, with the stands shaking, or at least the temporary stands shaking. We want Dallas. We want Dallas. For me, it will always be the New Year's Eve game on 1972 when, for the first time, the Redskins advanced to the Super Bowl. They had won their championships in 1937 and 1942. That was before I was born, so I was at an age where I could fully drink it in at age 14, and watching on the snowy reception that we got on our television set from Channel 2 in Baltimore. Yes, the game was blacked out here, but remember seeing the beautiful pass from Billy Kilmer to Charlie Taylor to cement the game, and they won 26-3 and went on to the Super Bowl, unfortunately losing to the Dolphins. But for me, that's the seminal moment of RFK Stadium. Then the championship game of 83, they beat the 49ers there in January of 1984. And then Mark Rippon pulled off two blowout games, really. I mean, that's what they were. They beat Atlanta in what's called the seat cushion game. For whatever reason, for a playoff game, they gave out promotional seat cushions. You know, usually when you have a promotional day, it's a game where you're trying to bring people in. RFK had been sold out at that point for for 20 years. I mean, I don't know exactly what the thinking was, but for that game, they gave fans seat cushions. And when the Redskins scored to lock the game up, they showered the field with the seat cushions. That was crazy. And then they blew out the Detroit Lions, went to the Super Bowl, and won it against the Buffalo Bills. Mark Rippon did the quarterbacking for those 3 games and was on last night with Scott Abraham on Channel 7 to talk about his impressions of the stadium off the artist renderings.
I'm glad they kept the theme of the old RFK, and then just looking how they positioned it straight up to the Capitol building was, I think, pretty. Someone put some thought into this, and I think it's going to be great for the community there, too, for Commander Redskin fans to get back to the old stomping grounds and start winning championships again.
To have a stadium, it's almost like they kind of duplicated the original RFK and just modernized it. Obviously, there's some modern touches, but it seems like the soul of RFK is still kind of in that rendering.
100%. And I think that's kudos to Josh and the team of architectural designers that put this thing together to kind of keep the same concept and keep the same ideas as what won us championships back in the 80s and 90s. So I'm just excited. 2030 can't come soon enough, I think, for everyone. And it's just, I think, going to be a wonderful, wonderful addition to that area and the people in that area, and to put shops and the design, or from what I've heard, the overall concept is to make it a very vibrant place and place you want to take your family for dinners and shops and all the good things that come with it. So
when you see a design of a new stadium like that, Rip, does it make you want to put on the helmet and shoulder pads again?
Not one bit. It makes me want to go out there and cheer our guys on and our coaching staff and Josh and his group to get another one of those Lombardi trophies and honor the past versus what's coming here in the present, and just to make sure that, the people in Washington, D.C. deserve something great like this. It's going to rejuvenate our fan base, and I think our fan base has already kind of been rejuvenated to see the excitement in the area. We just got to keep our guys healthy, and that's the most important part. And it also plays a big role in winning championships. The years that we did win Super Bowls, we stayed pretty healthy, and it was one of the turning stones to make our run for Super Bowls the way they were. So,
Rip, obviously the big difference with this edition of RFK is the roof, right? You had no roof on the original. What are your thoughts on having a roof? Obviously, most stadiums are going toward that way now.
Well, I don't know, and I didn't see from the renderings. Could tell from the renderings if a retractable roof or not.
No, it's not. It's not going to be. It's just going to be a translucent roof.
Yeah. Well, I think that a couple things. One, I mean, for players playing always on natural grass was so much easier to play on as far as injuries and things of that nature. To have artificial turf, and even though the artificial turf has gotten so much better over the years, it's still the susceptibility to injury increases, when you have artificial grass versus natural grass. So if they can somehow do that, some sort of grass in there and grow grass, and but I don't think that's possible when you put a roof on top. So unless they can do what they do in Phoenix, and that's retract the thing out and get photosynthesis going and keep the grass green and push it back in for game times, that would be kind of cool. But I don't think they have the room to do so there. And so it'll great other way. I think it was always wonderful when I was a backup to be on teams and play in dome stadiums, because you got, the circumstances, is going to be consistent throughout. You're going to have the field's going to be the same. There's going to be no weather or anything that's going to put any damper to what you're trying to do.
And another positive of having a roof is you're probably going to get a Super Bowl down the line, because that's kind of the track record of the NFL. You build a nice stadium with a roof, you're probably going to get a Super Bowl. How about a Super Bowl in Washington, D.C. down the road, Rip?
That would be awesome. And our nation's capital, I think, deserves something of that nature. Also, it'd be nice if our they're playing, I think, in San Francisco. I know the 49ers faithful would love to have their 49ers back there for their final game. Wouldn't it be great if we did get our first Super Bowl? And it would be, well, I'm not going to say the first one. Maybe we can win one in the meantime, but it'd be a chance to have our team, the Commanders, represented in Washington, D.C. at a Super Bowl.
So Why do you think it's so important to you, maybe your teammates and the fans, to have this new stadium back at the RFK site?
Well, I just think it brings everything full circle. My good buddy Drew Bledsoe played for the Patriots and is in the wine business, and so he calls his wine Double Back, and I think that's kind of what it is. To double back to the same site that all these world championships were fostered in, and I think that's the great thing about doing so. And there's just such a connect to that area and the people in that area and the Washington faithful that will bring them back to an area that they are very familiar with, and we're all familiar with, and winning Super Bowls.
That's Mark Rippon with Scott Abraham on ABC 7 last night. Should be pointed out, despite his seeming disappointment about this being indoors with no retractable roof, the absolute high point of Mark Rippon's career was indoors. It was at the Minneapolis Metrodome when they won the last Super Bowl, and Rippon was the MVP. And of all the Super Bowl MVPs, this is now Super Bowl 60. There have been a few repeat winners. Bart Starr won the first two, and I guess Terry Bradshaw's won a couple of them. Certainly Tom Brady's won 3 or 4 of them. But of all the MVPs of the Super Bowl, there's just a handful who had careers like Rippon. One would be Larry Brown, who was a defensive back for the Dallas Cowboys and picked off 2 passes against the Steelers. But, for that one shining moment, Mark Rippon was spectacular. He had a good career and a good career here, but as a whole, it was a journeyman career. He played, 12 years in the league or so and bounced around to several different teams. But the absolute high point of his career was indoors. So I don't think he's necessarily critical of an indoor stadium, but when he played in an indoor stadium in the ultimate game, he had the ultimate day. Tony Kornheiser, Mike Wilbon covered Rippon and those Super Bowl teams that he was a part of. He was a backup on the one that Doug Williams won, and they went to games at RFK for over 20 years. And they kicked it around yesterday on PTI what their thoughts were on the renderings of the stadium.
Pictures show the stadium built literally upon the foundations of the old RFK, where Washington played while winning 3 Super Bowls. The team hopes to complete construction of the venue by 2030. Tone, these renderings, you look at them, they make you feel what?
They make me feel, as I'm sure they make you feel, nostalgic for RFK.
Yeah.
All right, where you and I covered games for almost 20 years, in that particular stadium. RFK, it looks like RFK. There's a sweep like RFK. It's not going to be the same stadium. As you say, it's domed. A clear roof would be very, very nice, actually. I think the people who have designed the really beautiful stadium in Minnesota, designed SoFi. But yeah, it makes me nostalgic for RFK. And like everybody else in Washington, I hated that dump in Maryland that Jack Kent Cooke built. All right, RFK was vibrant, RFK was welcoming, and FedEx Field had raw sewage leaking out. RFK, it actually bounced. You and I were there when it actually bounced when the team was winning, and the other one, the FedEx Field, sits there sort of like an open sore. Look, it's very deliberate what is going on here. They're building it inside the District of Columbia. They're building it on the RFK site. This is a deliberate attempt to attach themselves to their great past, and their great past is pretty much long gone. And so they have to recreate it, and this stadium is a step towards that recreation of a once great franchise.
Let's keep in mind, RFK is a dump. RFK has long been a dump. It's just a charming dump, which we like, as opposed to FedEx Field, which was just a dump, which nobody liked after about 3 weeks. So let's get that straight.
No.
I looked at this, and the columns that they use, I mean, it really looks like, wow. The columns, the saddle top, which is just like RFK. Yeah. And if you're in Washington, D.C., and you stand in front of Abraham Lincoln and you look out away from the district, you know that they're in line at the Washington Monument and then the Capitol of the United States and then RFK. They're in perfect alignment. The angles are perfect. And so, it conjures up a certain warmth that hasn't been felt for that franchise until it was sold, till Dan Snyder got out of Dodge. But it's cool. I think we can agree. The roof thing, I hate roofs.
Yes.
I hate roofs on all these stadiums. Play outdoors, but, nobody's listening to me.
Looks good. It looks good.
Looks
and the
great.
fact of the matter is that in the last 5, 6, 8 years, people from Washington were outnumbered by people from visiting teams because people in Washington hated the owner and hated the stadium.
No question about it. And so new ownership brings the new stadium. And during the end days of Dan Snyder, you were hearing it might be built in Virginia, it might be built on the same site because they own the land where they are in Landover. And new ownership got this done. They got this done. It's a great thing. I would just throw one fly into the ointment. It's a minor thing. But by the time this new stadium opens on the RFK site, it will have been 34 years since they played a game at RFK Stadium. Last game was December of 1996. And, the number of people that will have great memories of being there, they're middle-aged and up. Realistically, if the last game that was played there is 96, and when the new stadium opens in 2030, you're talking about someone who would probably have to be in his mid-40s to remember being there. Maybe, vague memories of going as a kid, a 6 or 7 year old, but also this. They didn't play baseball there for the last 25 years of the stadium. The Senators left after 1971. They had a few exhibition games there over the years. The D.C. United played and things like that. But the going to that stadium, multi-purpose, that was only a 10-year run. It opened in 1961. The Senators left after the 71 season, and the Redskins stayed on. But that's what it was. It was a Redskins stadium for most of its existence. It only had baseball for 10 years. And there were other events, concerts, and, it was a great place. But the memories of going to football games there will be reserved for middle age and up. And that tells you about the passage of time, how much time passes, and we don't even realize it. For people of my generation, people in their 60s, we think of RFK like, they recently left and they've been playing in this dump for a little while, but now they're going to get back to the old. Okay. So and the feel is going to be totally different. I have been to a focus group for the new stadium. It's going to be costly. Top end personal seat licenses, and everybody who buys a season ticket has to have a personal seat license. They'll drop depending on the value of the seat, but top end is $25,000 per seat. So if you're going to buy 4 season tickets, which, by the way, top end, $1,000 a ticket, it's going to cost you $100,000 just in 4 personal seat licenses. And it's a lot different than the quaint days of RFK where the only luxury box belonged to Jack Ken Cook, and people who made $20,000 a year could be sitting next to someone making $200,000 a year. And the people who made $20,000 a year could afford to have those season tickets too. Because they weren't what they're going to be. And so it's going to be a different world. But the place where it's going to be is vitally important. And I think they did, I don't know what everything is going to look like when it opens, but just from the artist sketches, home run. It looks very similar to RFK, lines up with the monuments. It's what you want. And according to some of the drawings that I've seen prior to this, because of the translucent roof, you will be able to see the monuments from the stadium, and that'll be a plus too. So nothing really negative to say about it other than, you got to be really a little bit older to fully appreciate the whole thing. All right. Coming up, we will get to the John Harbaugh situation. Still not done, but looks like they're getting closer to a deal with the Giants and what that means. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We are almost 2 weeks removed from what we call Black Monday, when coaches get fired the day after the season ends, and we got a higher vacancy rate this year than most years. Nine jobs still open. We've been hearing about the Giants now for 72 hours that they're closing in on John Harbaugh, but still no deal done yet. It appears that they will have one. There's stories all over the place about this big dinner with the Maras and the schmoozing. And I mean, it's going to happen. It's just not happened yet, and there's no other job that's filled yet either. It's just kind of bizarre. But as for what John Harbaugh would mean coming to New York and to coach the Giants, Boomer Esiason has lived there most of his life. He once quarterbacked the Jets, of course, the Bengals, and also was with Arizona. But now has been hosting mornings on WFAN radio for 20 years now. It's been a while, been a long time. And he was on yesterday with Dan Patrick to discuss what the hiring of Harbaugh would mean for the Giants.
They needed somebody here, Dan. They needed credibility. They needed instant credibility. They do have a quarterback, as we all know, that we think is going to be really good. I think Todd Monken is going to be the perfect offensive coordinator for him. When you think about Lamar Jackson's 2 previous years, 24 or actually 24 and 23, he was awesome. And Todd Monken was the offensive play caller. They had the number 1 offense in the league one of those years. They had the 4th offense in the league another one of those years. He won one of his MVPs. And that's exactly what the Giants and Jackson Dart need here. So this is going to bring stability. I think it's going to make John Mara very happy, who's obviously ill, dealing with cancer. I thought Chris Mara's initial foray down to Baltimore last week to have lunch with John Harbaugh really set the tone for these negotiations. And I think a Harbaugh to the Giants, to me anyway, in the NFL world, makes a total sense.
But you go from Baltimore, where you have to win, you got a Super Bowl roster, to now the Giants. How much time do they give him to get this team back to respectability?
I mean, can he pull a Ben Johnson? Can he pull a Mike Vrabel? You know, these new guys went into places where they had second-year quarterbacks who were can't-miss players, and look at what those 2 coaches did with their quarterbacks and what they did in free agency. Everybody forgets that the Patriots spent the most money in free agency last offseason, mainly on defense, and then the Bears spent mainly on the interior offensive line to protect Caleb Williams. And how has that worked out? So I think expectations would be high here. I certainly think with Malik Neighbors, with Andrew Thomas, with their running tandem, with Jackson Dart, the offense is pretty solid. I think they'll probably add a wide receiver in the draft, but their defense is really what needs the most work. And it'll be interesting to see who he hires as his defensive coordinator, because I haven't heard that yet.
Can you teach Jackson Dart to play differently?
No, all he has to do is learn. I call it youthful inexperience is what it is. He's trying to prove to his teammates that he belongs on the field. I think he gets caught up in the emotion of the game, wants to get the fans, especially at home, into the game. He wants to lead by example. He does remind me a little bit of Josh Allen, the way he plays, and at times when he runs, he's a little bit reckless. And Josh has learned. And nobody does it better than Josh, for that matter. But I remember when he was a rookie and even into his second year, they were saying the same things about him, Dan, that they're saying about Jackson Dart and running with the football and protecting himself. But believe me, he will learn quickly.
Yeah, but, Josh wasn't in the blue tent. Like Jackson Dart, I mean, that's a co-op for him. Like, we can't have that. I mean, come on, slide. It's okay.
Well, I know, and he actually did learn when he came back from the latest injury. Towards the end of the year against the Raiders, and at home, he learned how to play the position better. I mean, look, he's a football player. That's what I love about him more than anything else. Patrick Mahomes, he's a football player. Drake May, he's a football player. C.J. Stroud. I mean, these guys all love getting mixed up into the action and taking some hits. Maybe I was not one of those types of guys. I always tried to stay away from it as much as I could. Maybe that's why I lasted so long. But again, I don't want to take the inner football player out of him, because that's what makes him so special.
Why did the Jets always get it wrong?
Well, it always starts at ownership. That's where it always starts. And, they've gone this coordinator route for many years, and they were really close when they first acquired Aaron Rodgers. When Aaron came running out on that field that first September 11th with the flag, and it gave me chills. And I wish that I could have been in that uniform like he was that night, and what it really brought to all of us as football fans here in New York. And then 3 or 4 plays in, he blows out his Achilles. I mean, that was the moment where the Jets had it right. And he came back and had a pretty good second year, by the way. But then Woody Johnson got involved, and they fired Rob Saleh, and then all hell breaks loose. So now Darren Muji's got to pick up the pieces. I would say that Darren's done a great job here in terms of acquiring assets for a team that desperately needs them. But until they find a quarterback, they're going to be stuck in neutral too, just like every other team that's in their same situation.
That's Boomer Esiason yesterday with Dan Patrick on both the Jets and the Giants situation, mostly Giants. Also on the Jets, he later said that he thought that they were dodging a bullet because they have the number 2 pick, and Dante Moore, who probably would have been taken because everybody's desperate for a quarterback. Dante Moore going back to Oregon means that they can't draft him, and he's not ready. He's only started for 1 year. And also there's a report that Dante Moore is getting $7.5 million to go back to Oregon. $7.5 million to be a college quarterback. And the way the salary structures work, you get these big signing bonuses if you're at the top of the draft, but I don't think there's a rookie quarterback making that salary. Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, you name it. He ain't making that kind of money, but that's the way things are working right now in college football. All right, more on the Harbaugh apparent hiring, the hiring to be. Louis Riddick worked in the front office here, worked in the front office Philadelphia, played in the NFL, played in college, intersected with John Harbaugh when he was a position coach when Riddick was playing at Pitt, and Riddick yesterday with Dan Patrick on the apparent hiring of Harbaugh.
He is the true definition of a CEO when you're talking about a head coach and what that role really does entail. Because he started off as a special teams coach, right? And then Andy gave him more exposure to defense to kind of round out his resume a little bit more when he was coaching there, so he could become a head coach. I think he is someone who, on the way out in Baltimore, like something just doesn't sit well with me with the way that all went down because of the role that I know that player accountability plays in team underperformance, right? And obviously we live in a world and in a society where everyone's looking for, I got to find that guy who I can hang it on, that guy who I can put it around his neck, and that guy who I can hold accountable. And there's a lot of people who behind the scenes who sit back and just kind of go, well, I escaped that one. Well, I escaped that. There's a lot that went into that team's underperformance in my belief. And I think, spinning it forward, I love what Coach Dayball did as far as really vouching for Jackson Dart and kind of selling him to John. And obviously ownership up there is going to give him everything that he needs. And it's a quick trip right up 95, man, for him, which is super cool. And I think he's going to do a hell of a job. I think he's going to be recharged and kick it right in the ass like he should.
Was this the best opening in your opinion?
I think because of the quarterback situation and the young pieces situation, where if you were like to list the top 5 positions on a football team that you needed to have in place in order to then fill out everything around it. Yeah, I think when you look at the fact that you have Jackson Malik coming back, you have edge pass rushers, you have a guy who can be a workhorse every down back. He's going to still need to fix that offensive line and make it something that becomes more consistent. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things in place right there. Now, obviously, player identification, selection, development, all that stuff has to still happen. But yeah, a lot of the foundation is right there. It really is. And I think, the Big Blue fan base is as passionate as there is in football. There's a lot of alumni who are sitting there going, thank you, And I think he's going to have a lot of support behind him and a lot of wind pushing him along to where I think this is going to be a spot where now the Giants are going to be players again, for real.
Let's take out the legacy of the Steelers. Let's just look at what that roster is.
Mm-hmm.
How good a job is this?
Look, I think the number one. Okay, so when you look at how good of a job is it, if we're talking about, ownership structure and stability plus GM, quarterback, all that alignment, that really does factor into how good of a job is. Look, ownership. Quarterback, ownership is rock solid. So that there's someone who's going to really try and identify a person that they think is going to be long-term, and they're going to give them a lot of leeway in order to kind of learn on the job, just like they did with Mike, just like they did with Coach Cowher, just like they did with Chuck Noll. So I think that obviously makes it attractive immediately, number one, because you're going to have time. Number two, you're going to have time because they don't have a quarterback. So I think that may knock it down for some. And people are going to go, well, what the hell are they going to do there? Well, that's a great question. Well, That's part of the deal. That's why they're kind of in this situation in the first place. It's kind of what wore Mike out, I believe, at the end, along with a bunch of other things. The fact that they just couldn't get that position right. But I think once they figure that out, I think there are some young pieces on the offensive line. I think you have to continue to fill out the wide receiver core around DK Metcalf and make sure that is a position of strength. Running back's a position of strength. Defense is aging and probably a little bit too high priced for long-term sustainability and needs to be revamped and rebooted. But there's so many things though that will make that place attractive to top level coaches for sure. And number one is the fact that they're not just going to turn over coaches at the first sign of there being some kind of adversity, like so many other places do. And that's probably the number one thing that prospective head coaches should be looking for. How much time is the coach going to give you? Is the owner going to give you? How much support are they going to give you? And then how much support are they going to give you to go out and get the assets that you need? Mr. Rooney will do what he needs to do in order to get them what they need to get to make this team successful. Simple as that. Then it's up to Omar and whoever they pick to get the job done.
But you look at certain openings, you got to win now in Pittsburgh. It's not just get to the playoffs. You got to win now in Baltimore. It's not just get to the playoffs. Whereas Atlanta, Miami, Cleveland, Arizona, Tennessee, even the Giants, you get a grace period. You walk into Baltimore, you better make the playoffs. And Pittsburgh the same way.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that? I kind of look at those two teams a little bit different, simply because, look, in Pittsburgh, you better win now simply because Mike always kept it above water, right? He was always in the hunt, but just couldn't get over the top for whatever reason it was. Whatever you want, if you wanted to pin it on his schemes, strategies, tactics, lack of quarterback play, whatever you wanted to pin it on. But the fact is, now that one crucial piece that you know will give you a chance to win now is not there. So there's going to need to be an adjustment of expectations there. There just is. And I think Mr. Rooney will figure, like he knows that, although he says, hey, look, this isn't a retool. This isn't a rebuild. Okay, you can say that now. But the reality is, what's your answer then? What's your answer at quarterback? At Baltimore, I agree with you. For sure, you better win now. And I'll tell you what, I'll even take it a step further. The players that are there, they're the ones who better make sure that they win now. Because one of the primary reasons why John is not there is because the player, well, there's a number of different things. One, we talked about this being maybe one of the best rosters in football, et cetera, all the time. This year, maybe not. Maybe look at their front seven and look at how many injuries they suffered on the front that really did limit the things that they could do defensively. But number two, their best players need to practice, need to hold themselves accountable, need to be held accountable, need to know the scheme inside and out, need to be able to execute at a high level at all times. And those are things that I'll tell you what, coaches can only do so much. They're going to get a fantastic coach. There's no question about that. But the players have to pull their weight. The players have to own up. We just heard Jason Kelsey talking about this the other day with Philadelphia, where he was screaming about the fact that, we can sit there and we can pin it on Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo and just kick them in the ass all we want about, well, their scheme sucks, it's vanilla, it's this, it's that, it's this. We get so far away from sometimes about the fact that, I don't know too many. Look, I've been around some bad coaches, don't get me wrong. I've been around some coaches who didn't teach me anything. But by and large, I'm going to have some faith in the fact that, the NFL is comprised of people who are pretty competent at their job. I was never coached ever to fumble the football, jump off sides, pull someone's face mask, drop the football, take bad angles to the football, not wrap up when you're supposed to tackle. I was never coached to do that kind of stuff. But now, as soon as players don't do that, fire the coach. Get his ass out of there. Get someone else. Fire the coach. They're not good. It's like, hey, if Baltimore has that good of a roster like everyone says they do, then they should be playing a lot better than what they are. And you're right. They better win next year. Right away. No question about it.
That's Louis Riddick with Dan Patrick yesterday on the Harbaugh situation and other situations around the NFL. There's a developing situation in Seattle, where the Seahawks tomorrow night are the biggest favorite of the weekend. They are 7-point favorites to beat San Francisco, and San Francisco has got a slew of injuries that they're dealing with, including the latest with George Kittle, torn Achilles, out for the year. Sam Darnold, who last year was a very much different Sam Darnold in January, this January could wind up being a very different Sam Darnold again as a Pro Bowler this season, with now an injury that has to at least hinder him tomorrow night. Whether he can play with it, we'll find out. He's right now listed as questionable. It happened in practice yesterday. It's an oblique injury. You hear about oblique injuries all the time in baseball, and players miss a month or two because of it. He said he just felt a little something in his left side while throwing during the air period. He's not getting hit or anything, just throwing passes, and left practice as a precautionary matter. They are now listing him as questionable to play. He says he expects to play, and he said, asked what percentage he thinks he might not play. He said very low percentage, probably close to zero. Yeah, it's the playoffs. You play. If you can't go, it's Drew Lock, be the backup, and Jalen Milroe, who's a rookie, third-round pick out of Alabama. So that would make a huge difference, don't you think, for Seattle? He completed 67% of his passes, threw for over 4,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, and he did have a bunch of turnovers this year with interceptions and fumbles, but big key for them is going to be the health of Sam Darnold, and if he can't go tomorrow night, wow. The other games much closer on the spreads. Buffalo is a favorite on the road, 1.5 tomorrow at Denver. Houston at New England. You've got New England favored by 3. There's talking about snow there as a possibility. And then the Rams at Chicago. And even though it's supposed to be like 10 below, the Rams are favored by 3.5. And a lot of it has to do with Matt Stafford, the quarterback, for sure. But we'll see how they deal with the elements. Everybody assumes that the Bears are going to be more prepared to play in the cold. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Football players are football players, and the Bears have had a couple of cold weather games this year, but I really don't buy that. I just think it's a lot of times it's talent, it's breaks, it's, whatever happens over the course of a football game. Baseball has now the biggest gap between the haves and the have-nots and I'm not going on any numbers here, this is just anecdotally, it just seems to me the gap has never been bigger than it is right now. And there's lots of talk about baseball not having a season in 2027 because of a strike or a lockout. Rob Manfred is the commissioner. He's getting tired of hearing the talk. I'll play what he had to say yesterday on WFAN. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Big baseball free agent signing last night. The Dodgers have signed Kyle Tucker. He gets a 4-year deal worth $240 million. I'm not great with math, but I believe that's $60 million a year. And in joining the Dodgers, Kyle Tucker becomes one of 14 players. They only have 26. 14 players on the roster, more than half the roster, making over $10 million a year. With at the top of the list, the names that you probably know, their salaries. Shohei Ohtani, a $700 million deal. Now, he's only getting $2 million a year because of the deferred money. So just think if he was getting the other $68 million a year, how much more their payroll would be. You got Mookie Betts making $365 million, and Yamamoto, the pitcher who was so key to their World Series championship, $325 million contract. The opening day roster is projected to be at a salary of $413 billion. That's almost $100 million more than the Mets, with Steve Cohen spending like a drunken sailor. And the Washington Nationals, who will play their home opener against the Dodgers on April 3rd, have a projected payroll of about $100 million, less than a fourth of the Dodgers. And on top of that, about 25% of that is going to Steven Strasburg, who's not even pitching anymore. That's all money that was on the contract, which was guaranteed, and his career ended because of injuries. Trevor Williams is the highest paid Washington National at $7 million a year. $7 million. And what we're seeing here is a state of baseball that, it's managed to operate for quite a while at this rate. Free agency came in, it's been 50 years now, 1976. Reggie Jackson, oh my God, Reggie Jackson got over $1 million over 3 years. Wow, things have gone crazy. Well, here we are now, and we look at these numbers, and you don't even think about it anymore. The Dodgers have, let's say baseball stops playing and the players still have to get paid. The Dodgers have committed in guaranteed salary $2.1 billion. $2.1 billion not long ago was the going price of a franchise. That's just what they have committed in guaranteed money. Tucker, good free agent signing. He's 29 years old, maybe the best player available in free agency. Some of the money's deferred, $30 million. Whoop-de-doo. It's a $240 million deal. He also got a $64 million signing bonus, $54 million paid up front. The numbers are just staggering. Now, the Dodgers, this is supposed to deter teams from spending, hadn't deterred them. They're paying close to $170 million in luxury taxes, more than the second and third place Mets and Yankees combined. The two New York teams combined pay less in luxury tax than the Dodgers. And the Dodgers have figured it out. They know how to do it. And on top of everything else, unlike the Mets, they're winning. They're winning back-to-back World Series championships. It's working for them. So you got a lot of grumbling going on right now. And you have fans and, maybe even some players saying, yeah, it looks like we're going to have a lockout here. It looks like there's no way to avoid that. And Rob Manfred, the commissioner on WFAN yesterday with Craig Carton, is not happy about hearing all that talk.
I do think there has been a rush to negativity by a lot of the media that covers.
Well, the last
sport.
one was pretty ugly. Last one was, and it went pretty long. And,
but that was Max Scherzer's fault. He's going to be around for the next one.
And there was multiple times where we thought we were missing games. So I mean,
look, here's the thing. I came inside at baseball in 1998. We have always played through 5 or 6 rounds of bargaining. We have always played 162 games. Okay, all I can tell you is that when I came, my goal was to make sure that every time we bargained, we played 162, and that's my goal this time around. We haven't even started the process. And candid conversation about, we see things that need to be addressed. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make this proposal or that proposal. I think we have to wait and see how things unfold at the table. We got lots and lots of time to work on it. And the most important thing for fans is certainly my goal to make sure that we played 162 games next year.
Well, good luck with that. They will have it, I would think this year, 2026, they have a deal. Now the players could strike. The owners could put some pressure on the players, even though there's time left on the contract. They can lock them out until they sign an extension. When the commissioner says we have lots and lots of time, I laugh at that because in my career, I covered the 1990 lockout extensively in New York. This was when the players were locked out. It's not like the one where they were prepared to go with scab players at the start of the 1995 season. This is an era where Bud Selig, who was not the commissioner then, he was a small market owner of the Milwaukee Brewers and would talk to anybody who would listen saying, hey, we have to have a salary cap. We have no choice. We can't do it. The minor market teams can't get this done. And for a while there, it looked like they were going to have a salary cap and that the players were ready to cave on that. And Don Fear, who is the executive director of the Baseball Players Association, I'm not even sure he was a baseball fan. He was a labor guy. And he had been the assistant under Marvin Miller. Marvin Miller was the one who was the complete game changer. He ushered in free agency. It wasn't the Kurt Flood case that won it for the players, but it paved the way. And as he took over in 1972, he said, this is the most abused group of laborers I've ever encountered. He worked with the steelworkers. And he looked at the reserve clause and he said, this is totally unfair. If a steel worker wants to go from one company to another for a pay raise, he can do it. baseball, they're stuck. You play out your contract, doesn't matter. Team still owns your rights. And eventually they did away with the reserve clause, and then the floodgates opened for all the money. And Fear was one who had no fear, to use a pun there. He understood that if they waited out long enough, they were going to beat the owners, which they've always done. And the owners have always tried to put in a salary cap. There had been strikes going back as early as 1972. And I remember covering that and talking to Fear and all the different people, and they're like, "Hey, you know what? You want to play baseball? Let's play baseball." And as the players were about to cave, Don Fear brought in Marvin Miller and he brought in Reggie Jackson to talk to the players. Say, "Hey, wait a minute! Look at what we did for you. Don't cave here." They didn't. The owners wanted. Fay Vincent, who was the commissioner at the time, they wanted him to be a hardliner. They wanted him to not, and he gave in. And so that led to the exit of Fay a couple of years later. And who takes over but Bud Selig, the one who was the mover and the shaker for the salary cap. They still haven't gotten it done. And maybe this is the time to get it. Tony Clark is head of the Players Association. I don't know him, but he doesn't have the labor credentials that the other labor leaders have had. Yeah, he's been involved in the Players Association for a long time, and he's learned a lot about labor negotiation, but he's not a lawyer. And I look at what's going on now, and I say with all the money that these guys make, and you look at the other sports, all of which have salary caps, it's got to happen because the luxury tax hasn't worked. Look at the Dodgers. The Dodgers are paying more than the Mets and the Yankees combined, and they don't care. They just keep signing people, and they must be making money because it's not an enterprise that can operate if you're losing tons and tons of money. With the TV deals that they have, with the marketing deals that they have, Shohei Ohtani makes a ton himself, $100 million off the field, but the way they're able to market the team in Japan and the United States, it's just working for them. And sooner or later, you got to level the playing field a little bit, especially if the Dodgers win a third straight, which is possible. I mean, spending money doesn't guarantee anything. Witness the Mets. And we've had teams of smaller markets win championships in the last, 15 years. Kansas City Royals won, Tampa Bay Rays. I mean, it happens. It does happen. But by and large, it's a sport that's controlled by the haves, and the distance between them and the have-nots continues to grow. And I don't know what is ultimately going to happen, but I would not be surprised if there is another work stoppage. 162, Rob, I don't think it's happening. Maybe this year, not happening in 2027. I've seen too many of these over the years, and I'd be very surprised if they can get something done. And if it is done quickly, I would imagine it's the players caving, which they've never done before. All right, coming up, more on the football. Oh, you remember that hat that Rob Lowe wore with the NFL logo on it? He explained that story yesterday on the Rich Eisen Show. We'll get to that coming up next. It is the hat that launched 1,000, maybe 1 million internet comments. Rob Lowe, the actor Rob Lowe, watching a football game in San Jose, the 49ers and the Packers in the NFC Championship game. He was wearing a black hat with an NFL logo on it. No team rooting at all, just rooting for the shield, right? Had the shield on the hat. And people have been trying to figure out what the hell's been going on with that hat for 5 years. Well, Rob Lowe, yesterday on the Rich Eisen Show here on ESPN 630, told everyone the story behind the hat. And you're going to have to wait a little bit to hear it. We'll get to that towards the end of the hour. But some things to talk about here. The playoffs coming up tomorrow with the 2 games, and then the 2 games on Sunday, the national championship game on Monday. And then we are, kind of in barren territory for the NFL. It's the biggest games. We will have the following weekend. We'll have the NFC and the AFC championship games, then the week off and the Super Bowl. And it's all over so quickly. We're inundated with football now, with the games on Thursday nights and Monday night, and then you get to like the holidays. They play on Thanksgiving. They now play on Christmas Day. They play football all the time. And yet When we get to the end of the season, it's like, oh boy, that went by quickly. Where'd all the games go? How did that get by me so quickly? It just the way it is. It's and that's what's helped to popularize the NFL. That it doesn't seem like a slog. It's a long season. It starts in the brutal heat, and here we are in the frigid cold. But other than the temperature changes and the calendars, flipping over, it does feel like a very short season when you get to the end of it, because it leaves you wanting more, which is really what good entertainment should be all about. Before we get to the Booger McFarland thoughts on the playoffs as he talked yesterday on PTI, you know that an NBA game is 48 minutes. You know that a college basketball game is 40 minutes. And you probably know that a high school basketball game is 32 minutes. That's it, 32 minutes, 4 8-minute quarters. And there was a kid the other night in Arizona. Now, this seems to happen more with women's basketball. There could be a player, the likes of like Cheryl Miller did this decades ago. Cheryl Miller in a high school basketball game in California had 105 points. She went on to become a big star at USC, played in the Olympics. Sadly, her career was ended by a knee injury. She was just on the cusp of she would have been older, but she was good enough to play in the WNBA and maybe even be a star. But she suffered a knee injury playing pickup basketball, and that ended. She does a lot of different things. She's done broadcasting. She's coached, all that. She stayed visible in basketball, but she was a great player. And in high school, she scored 105 points. You don't hear often about male basketball players in high school scoring 100 points, but it happened the other night at Phoenix Maryvale High School. Adrian Stubbs scored 100 points in a 109-25 victory over Yuma Kofa. Here's the rub. 70 of those points were scored in the first half, 2 8-minute quarters. He added 30 more in the 8-minute third quarter. He did not play the rest of the game. He scored 100 points. If I were the coach, I'd have left him out there. That's me. But maybe in the name of sportsmanship, he had the 100. He blew by the old record. And this was the 6A record. I don't know how they do this in Arizona, but I would think that's like the highest designation. I'm sure it's a public school. Okay, it's not private school, so you wouldn't get, like DeMatha playing Gonzaga. It's a different story. But still, 6A, that's not tiny little schools here. That's the biggest schools they have, I'm sure, and it's Phoenix. Phoenix is a big city. The previous record was held by Nico Mannion. He had 57 points. And the state record, the recent record was, and right now Mannion, if you don't know, is playing for University of Arizona. The state record is 75. That was set in the 65-66 season, but that was in a 1A designation. This is 6. The previous high that Stubbs had in his career was 56, one shy of the record. So he was going for the record last night, blew by it, and went for 100. He's averaging 24 points a game this season. And by the way, in that 100 points last night, or the other night, 6 3-pointers. He missed 7 free throws. Could have been a better free throw shooter. But, only 6 3-pointers on his way to 100. He said, I think I had 35 at the end of the first quarter, and my coach gave me the green light. Good coaching there. He said, I was going to go. That was probably the most unselfish game from teammates that I've seen in my life. Without them, this would not have been possible. All those passes, all the steals, huge shout out to them. So, where is Adrian Stubbs on the national recruiting radar? Absolutely nowhere. He's unranked for this year, and his only scholarship offers have been from junior colleges. Now, I don't know how quick he is. I don't know. I haven't seen how tall he is. I mean, I don't know anything about him other than this story. But it would seem to me that somebody might be paying attention to that. 100 points in a high school game in 3 quarters, which is 24 minutes. 100 points in 24 minutes on the floor. That's pretty good. I'd say that's really, really good. All right, Booger McFarland yesterday on PTI. He's always very good, and they were, of course, talking to him about the playoffs coming up this weekend, and they started with the Houston matchup as Houston is going into New England, and that's going to be the first game on Sunday. The Patriots are actually favored by 3 in this game, which was probably the reason that Tony Kornheiser kicked off the interview by asking him how the Houston defense would match up with the New England offense.
You know, Tony, for the very first time, you asked the wrong question because you're asking how does the Texans defense match up to the Patriots? You need to ask it the other way around. How does the Patriots offense match up to the Texans? Mike Tyson never got asked, how do you match up against the opponent? The opponent was always asked, how are you going to deal with Mike Tyson? Because, and I make that comparison, not joking. This is the best defense I've seen the last couple years, guys. Pay attention to what they did on Monday night to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're going to send Aaron Rodgers into retirement. Mike Tomlin has retired. It's an unbelievable speed that they play at. Everybody talks about the 2 ends when you talk about Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson Jr., but it's everybody. When you watch their tape, it's almost as if somebody has hit fast forward and they're playing at a faster speed. D'Amico Ryans, the head coach, is an outstanding defensive mind. They do a really good job of rallying to the ball. They don't give up big plays. They can cover on the back end. It's the best defense I've seen in football in quite a while. And so the question should be, not how are they going to deal with the Patriots, but how are the Patriots, who are going to start 2 rookie offensive linemen on the left side, guys, they got to block the Houston Texans. To me, that is a mismatch on the offensive line for the Patriots and the defensive line for the Texans.
Tony, sounds like Booger is leading toward a little road dog situation here.
Yeah.
Sounds like that from the way he's talking up those Texans. They do look fearsome. The Broncos, Booger, have a very good defense too. And of course, the Bills have Josh Allen. Are you leaning defense again here?
You know, I'm leaning more complete team because I think the Denver Broncos have the better team. And when you look at Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, it's Josh Allen, it's Cook, and then it's a bunch of guys that kind of work well together. When you look at the Denver Broncos, they're a more complete team. Defensively, they led the league in sacks this year. Offensively, Courtney Sutherland, the running back Harvey. I think if you're Sean Payton, here's the question you got to ask yourself. How much am I going to put on Bo Nix's plate? Because Bo Nix is the key. The last time these 2 teams played each other, which was in the playoffs last year, Bo Nix wasn't ready for the moment. Now, fast forward 365 days or so, now Buffalo is coming to Denver's house, and Denver's the 1 seed. If you're Bo Nix, are you going to perform better? Are you going to play better? If you're Sean Payton, how much of the meat and potatoes do you put on Bo Nix's plate? I think the defense will play well, but you're not going to beat Josh Allen 17-14. They're going to have to score in the mid-20s, and if Bo Nix can do it, and he can play turnover-free football, they'll win. If Bo Nix can't do it, then Superman, along with James Cook, they'll come into Denver and they'll get the win.
Booger, I'm going to ask you about the most mysterious team in the league, at least to me, the Chicago Bears, and why it is that teams can have success against the Bears for as many as 3 quarters plus, but not late. What is there some secret sauce? What the hell is going on there?
Well, I don't know if there's a secret sauce, Mike. I think early in the game, the Bears kind of beat themselves. And listen, and when I say the Bears, I'm actually talking about this offense because the defense is terrible. Yeah, they've led the league in turnovers all season long, which has masked some of their deficiencies, but the defense is not good. And so early in the game, it takes a little while for this offense to get going. It's almost as if Ben Johnson, who's the head coach and the play caller, has to kind of figure out what the defense is doing against him. And then when you get Caleb Williams backed up in the corner, DJ Moore, those guys get to going. And Caleb Williams has that it factor, Mike. You've seen it. Tony, you've seen it. We've been around sports a long time, guys. Sometimes you can't quantify it. You can't describe it, but you know when an athlete has it. And Caleb Williams has it. And it's almost as if late in the game, he tries to will his team to victory. He's not a perfect quarterback yet, but he's got the it factor, and he's a star. So I think against the Rams, he's going to have to play more consistently. He can't wait 3 quarters and then come in the 4th quarter because Matthew Stafford, the presumptive MVP, might put up 35 against their defense. So he's going to have to play a little bit more consistently throughout the game. But make no mistake about it. Early in the game, it's typically the Bears beating themselves.
We will get you out of here on this, and it's a college question. We've talked about the pros, now let's talk about college. It's Monday night. Miami is playing at home against Indiana. What kind of chance do you give Miami against Indiana?
Well, first of all, I truly hope the paramedics are around because Michael Irvin may just pass out at some point during the pregame. Like between he and Ray Lewis, he may just pass completely out because he's going to be so on cloud nine because his Hurricanes are playing for the championship. It's another case, guys, where you look at Kurt Signetti, and we've talked about this on the program all season long. He's got his guys believing that we're the best team. It's not about the number of 4 or 5 stars because they don't have many. It's about the complete team. They got the presumptive number 1 pick in Fernando Mendoza. He can go ahead and start buying real estate in Las Vegas. He's going to play for the Raiders. Brady and Spatek are going to pick him number 1. This game comes down to, can the team known as the Indiana Hoosiers, led by Signetti and Fernando Mendoza, how do they compare with some of the star power that Miami has? Carson Beck took the $4 million, came to Miami. You got Malachi Tony. You got Ruben Bain. You got Akeem Mesidor. They got first-round picks everywhere on this team. But here comes little old Indiana, who's 15-0, who's favored by 8.5 points. Can the star power of Miami play more consistently and play turnover, mistake-free football? Miami's biggest issues is they've beaten themselves in a lot of games. When they lost to Louisville, Carson Beck threw 4 interceptions. Is he going to be able to play mistake-free football? If he does, and Miami plays to their level, we're going to get an all-time classic. If he doesn't, then we're going to be talking about the Indiana Hoosiers as the 2025 national champions of college football. And I don't care who you talk to, nobody had that before the season started.
No. Especially 8.5-point favorites in the national championship game. That's Booger McFarland yesterday on PTI. The Kurt Signetti thing, people knew who he was going into the season off the miracle year that they had last year. But what's happened is he's become a national sensation, and it still isn't being ruled out that he's going to get one of these NFL jobs. Maybe it's the Pittsburgh Steelers now that Mike Tomlin has left. He grew up in that part of the country. That might make sense. Or he stays and he just keeps doing what he's doing. He is 64 years old. So if he wants to take a bite of the apple in the NFL, now or never, because, they'll come calling again next year if he has a great season. But at some point, you got to make your decision. I mean, look how long it took him to get to this level of college football. He was 62, right? 61, 62 when he got the Indiana job. So I don't know how he's anxious he will be to leave. And it's not about money. At this point, because of the escalators in the deal, he could be making like $20 million next year. That's not the thing. But what we're seeing is something that clearly has worked at a place where they never won before, and it's leading to imitators, including, and this is crazy when you think about this, Deion Sanders. Now, in terms of personality, I don't think you could find 2 more different types than Kurt Signetti and Deion Sanders. Deion was clearly a better player, one of the great players in NFL history. Kurt Signetti was, I believe, a backup quarterback at West Virginia. But what is being reported here, this is USA Today, is that Deion has looked at what Signetti is doing and said, I can do it this way. This is how I'm going to do it. And it says it relates to recruiting new players and choosing production over potential when evaluating those recruits, even if it means recruiting players from the lower rungs of college football. I mean, the pitches have to be so totally different. And even though Deion's been out of the NFL as a player for a long time, he's stayed visible. He's been on TV with the NFL. He's on commercials all the time. Kurt Signetti, so far, no commercials. Somebody's going to come up with one if he wins the national championship for sure. But with Signetti, not only relying on the transfer portal, but relying on the transfer portal for the lower divisions of, or they call it the lower rungs of college football, the FCS programs instead of the FBSs. And Signetti, if you don't know, brought 13 players to Indiana from James Madison when he took the job in 2024. Deion, and I've felt this now for 2 years now. The flame is gonna run out here. This has got to work this year, or he's leaving. When he first got there, oh my God, they won the first game against TCU, which had played for the national championship the year before, and they had a terrific season. I think they finished 9-3, and it was like, oh, he's going to go to the Cowboys. Everybody's going to want Deion Sanders as their coach. Well, they didn't make a bowl game last year, and they're the year before, and they're finished 3-9 this year, and didn't make I guess they did make a bowl game in the 2024 season, but finished 3-9 this year. But the players he's bringing in now are coming from places like Albany, Monmouth, New Mexico State, North Dakota State, Sacramento State, San Jose State. 34 different transfers. And Deion said, I know what I want. He said, I know how I want it. I know what we need and how we need and the type of young man that we needed. Well, he doesn't really have all that much coaching experience compared to Cignetti, because Cignetti has worked at all different levels. Deion's never been an assistant. He went right from being Neon Deion on TV to coaching at Jackson State, where he was terrific at, winning at that level, and he raised money. Nobody could raise money like Deion. He's able to do that. And he's bringing in players, including his son, who's now a quarterback in the NFL. And he also was able to bring in the Heisman Trophy winner. And so he not Heisman Trophy winner at Jackson State, but who went on to win it at Travis Hunter, who went on to win it at Colorado. And 9-4, 2024 at Colorado, he was able to do it with those guys, but it clearly has tailed off now. And whether he can copy what Curt Cignetti did is questionable to me. And the other part of the whole picture with Cignetti, and people don't talk about this enough, and he mentioned this when he was laying out this idea that his coaches don't stay late. He said, nobody works at night here. We're very efficient getting our work done. When we practice, we never practice more than an hour and a half. That's how we do things here. And, Deion, in terms of picking assistants, bringing in a guy like Warren Sapp, I think he's got a few other former pros on his staff. No, you want coaches. And the whole coaching thing is what you're really looking to put together. And coming up, we will get to what Josh Pate said yesterday on the Rich Eisen Show. Josh Pate is new media as far as I'm concerned. Used to be, I say used to be, in the last 10 years or so, you could have fame at one level and you take it to podcasting, like Tony did with his podcast off his success in local radio and national radio with ESPN, of course, PTI. Bill Simmons was really the trailblazer in this. Bill Simmons, well known from his writing with ESPN on TV, and he launched a podcast. Well, now successful podcasters are being hired by more traditional media. And there's a young man, I say young man, he's 35, he's young to me, had a very successful podcast and now is working for ESPN. And when you listen to him, you understand why he's a rising star. His name is Josh Pate, 35 years old. We'll hear his conversation with Rich Eisen and why things are working at Indiana, not just because of players and coach. It's because it's an actual team. We'll get to that more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
During the course of his playing career, Tony Romo probably had a number of what we would call comeback games coming off a bad performance where he threw 2 or 3 interceptions, Cowboys lose, and boy, he's got to have a bounce back. He's got to be able to come back and play well in the next game, which he did well enough to hang around the NFL for 12, 13 years. And then he made one of the most, if not the most successful transition to broadcasting that anybody's ever seen. I mean, he comes on the scene. Oh, wow, he can predict plays. And he's got this boyish enthusiasm. He knows the players. He knows the game. And before you know it, he's got a contract for $1 million a game, and it's a 10-year deal. Well, now 5 years into the deal, Bloom is off the Romo. It's a mess right now, at least perceptually. And there's a writer by the name of John Lund who put something out on, I guess it was Barrett Sports Media. And he says, step into the Tony Romo roller coaster, the former magician who now seems to have misplaced his rabbit. When Romo first picked up the mic, every viewer became an honorary offensive coordinator. He predicted plays, decoded coverages, and made us feel like Belichick for a minute. But here's the curse. Once you've pulled off a miracle, no one wants to see you juggle. Romo started electric. Now he's searching for a plug. These days, Romo's broadcasts feel like karaoke at a sports bar. Loud, enthusiastic, but woefully off-key. More wow, less substance. He claims he was under the weather during the Bills-Jaguars game last weekend. Fans don't hand out medals for effort. They hand out memes. Romo seems bored, trying to be cute and funny while hoping nobody notices. The truth is out, Tony. The perception isn't there. The enthusiasm, the preparation, he says, isn't there. Not perception. Preparation isn't there. The enthusiasm seems fake. He writes, Tom Brady is improving, better timing, better rhythm, less cyborg. Still, he sounds like he's reading a quarterly report, not a play chart. Fans want lightning, not LinkedIn. Brady's better, but he's still finding his voice, and Twitter's stopwatch is ticking. One awkward pause, and you're trending, just not the way you want. Meanwhile, Greg Olsen may be number 2 on Fox's depth chart, but he's become a fan and peer favorite alike in 2025. Fan polling consistently ranked him among the most liked NFL commentators, and he earned Sports Emmy nominations for his work in the booth. Now, the fair-haired boy is J.J. Watt, who's been working with Iron Eagle this year, and things have ramped up to the point, you saw a lot of it last weekend on social media. Hey, CBS maybe ought to demote Jim Nantz and Tony Romo and put Iron Eagle and J.J. Watt in the booth, and Watt's only been doing it for a year. Andrew Marchand covers media as his own podcast. He used to write for ESPN. I think he wrote for the New York Post. Now he's with The Athletic. He was talking to the writer of this, John Lund, about his observations of what he's seen with the group of analysts in the booth.
You look at what's gone on with Nance's partner. Phil Simms went backwards. Romo's gone backwards. I think you look at some of the NCAA people that they had. I think you look at the team right now with Grant Hill and Bill Raftery, it's better. Yeah. So if you put J.J. Watt in there, it'd probably be better because J.J. Watt did really well. But I also think J.J. Watt did really well because he had the right partner. So I think that's something CBS has to think about, and it's a very difficult decision. And the issue is that's a 10-year deal. That's a long contract.
I noticed it too. There were points where Romo tries to be Romo, and then, okay, here we go, Jim. 2 minutes left in the game. He does his little shtick. This is the big one, Jim. And Jim just kind of laughs like, you'd hear on like an NFL Today set where they laugh because they're supposed to laugh. And it's just it doesn't work.
Bingo. I put this out on Twitter when I heard Romo say that with about 2 minutes to go in the Bills-Jaguars game. Here we go, Jim. And I said, at this point, Tony Romo is imitating Frank Caliendo, imitating him. And one of the responses I got was from Frank Caliendo himself, who put out some laughing emojis about it. But it's big money for CBS. The proof will be in the viewership, and the viewership's not going to change really because it's the NFL. People are going to watch it. But right out of the box, we're going to see if we can have a bounce back performance from Tony Romo, and he probably knows he needs to have it. That's the first game of the weekend tomorrow afternoon at 4:30, Buffalo at Denver. That's going to be on CBS, and he's got to bring it because it was really, people were just trashing him last weekend, and that's the guy who reset the market on what these analysts make. $1 million a game is the going rate now, and Tom Brady, being Tom Brady, is making $37.5 million a year. Just crazy. I mentioned Josh Pate. I'm interested to follow his career now. Things have kind of flipped. Used to be you establish your name in mainstream media, and then you went to podcasting. He became very successful in podcasting, specific stuff, college football in the South. But as you'll hear, he's very articulate. He has very good references. He's got great knowledge of college football, not just SEC football, but all college football. And now he's become an analyst with ESPN. ESPN went searching for talent in the podcast business, and they're going to be more and more in the podcast business too. They still run radio, but I don't think their heart is fully in it, and they understand where things are going in this business. And Josh Pate is an example of that, and I'm sure that they'll eventually buy his podcast, which is, I'm sure, very, very successful. But when he was on with Rich Eisen yesterday, they started off with how things are working now in the portal and also where the money is these days. And we had this week, it all happened within this week, right? I think it was Monday when this was announced that Dylan Raiola was transferring from Nebraska, where he's been the starting quarterback for the last 2 years, to Oregon. And some looked at it like, oh, okay, I guess Dante Moore is going to declare for the NFL draft. Yet 2 days later, Dante Moore says he's coming back. Now, there are reports that Moore is going to make $7.5 million next season to be the quarterback at Oregon. And for Dylan Raiola, 2-year starter at a big program like Nebraska, assuming that Moore stays healthy, he's going to be on the bench. That is not as far-fetched as you might think. This was Pate on that yesterday with Rich Eisen.
It's Dylan looking at the situation and saying, Dante Moore once upon a time went to Oregon knowing Dylan Gabriel was there. And he committed there anyway, and he was happy sitting behind a guy for a year and marinating in a new system because he thought it would serve his best interest. And lo and behold, now Dante Moore's been the starting quarterback at Oregon, and he's shined. And so Dylan Raiola's looking at that saying, I'm leaving Nebraska. I want to go to Oregon. Now, scenario A, Dante Moore goes to the draft. I'm the starting quarterback up there. Scenario B, I'm okay with too. And that is what happened, which is Dante Moore comes back. Worst of worst case, I sit behind him for a year. Maybe it ends up being the best thing that's ever happened to me because, I mean, you watched him. You watched Dylan Raiola just like I did and the rest of America did this year. You saw flashes. You saw glimpses. You didn't see anything close to a finished product. You didn't see anything close to consistency wire to wire like you would need from a top flight quarterback, a guy that's going to be a playoff caliber guy, a guy that's being mentioned one day in mock drafts in his own right. So I think he went up there. And then you saw the announcement happen, and those announcements now, like you give all the credit in the world to Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson had a mega offer on the table from Miami the other day. And you're talking about north of $6 million to come back and play another year of college football, as opposed to going and testing the NFL draft waters. It's not nearly the feast or famine proposition that it used to be when you're deciding, do I go to the draft? Or do I come back and risk injury and leave myself totally broke and my family's future ruined? You're getting tons and tons and tons of money, just like Dante Moore just did, to come back to school for one more year. So it's probably right for his development. It also makes the pockets a lot deeper in the process.
So then I guess in the end, at the end of the day, where does the rich alumni base that now out in the open can give money to players rank in terms of the most important aspect of building a winning program in college football? Where does it rank with who's the head coach? Where does it rank with best recruiting class coming out of high school, facilities, school? Where does it rank? Is it number one now? I think it's
number two.
Okay.
I would make it number two. A lot of people are going to argue number one. To those folks, I would direct their attention to several mega payroll teams that were sitting at home for the playoffs. And I would ask them if that's the most important factor. Obviously, you could throw Indiana in their face, but you could also say, like, what about these big spending teams that sat at home? Obviously, it takes a little more than just having a bunch of cash and acquiring these commodities and toss them all together. I thought that's what was so impressive about Texas Tech this year. Texas Tech spent a ton of money. They were never shy about admitting that. But from day one, just the team dynamic, like the mortar between the bricks, in other words, that it normally takes a lot of time to put in place was there. That's the key. Like, it's not, can I go buy the best seeds? It's, what kind of garden am I tossing these seeds in? Yeah, I want to toss the highest price seeds in there. But am I tossing them in topsoil or am I tossing them in gravel? Because a lot of folks out there just trying to toss the seeds in gravel and thinking, well, you know, we paid enough money, just voila, it'll happen. It's no different than when you go pay a coach a whole lot of money and you think that circumvents you around the process that it takes for that coach to develop. Like at Oregon right now, Dan gets paid a ton of money, and yet they're still coming up in the playoffs and they're getting blown out a couple of times. Well, he's 39 years old. So you can either look at that and say, yeah, but he gets paid a ton of money, so he can't be losing like that. Or you can look at it and say, it doesn't matter if you pay him 10 million or 10 billion. You don't just get to pop coaches in the microwave and speed up development, just like with teams. You don't get to spend your way around the non-negotiables that it takes to win as a team. And that's why, like, with Indiana right now, no one's really going to pull off duplicating the Indiana blueprint because it's a kind of unique situation. But if people want to chase that model, I will relish in all these big spending programs chasing how to cultivate that kind of dynamic in their building. Because those are the sorts of things that I would love college football programs to be chasing instead of what many of them are chasing.
Well, is it fair to say Indiana just used the right amount of money on the right players with the right system and the right coach, and and got the right kid in Mendoza from Cal at the right time, and it's a lightning strike? Or is this something that, with the finances that Indiana has, they could just keep repeating over and over and over again, as long as they have the right guy at the top, and Cignetti and his staff identifying that kid there is perfect for our system, and we don't have to spend as much money on that kid because he's not a 5-star. He's not coming from a program that just won 12 games or anything like that, right? I mean, is that it? Is that it?
I think the skill is in putting yourself in position to compete for the title every year. And then there's a little bit of luck that goes into it. But to answer your question, yes, I think Curt Cignetti will have them in that picture every year. I'm firmly convinced of that.
Me too.
And I think,
Me too.
Think about this though. Okay, so two sides to this coin. When we were down in Atlanta last week, when they were playing Oregon, I think the entire state went down there, totally took over Atlanta. And they kept on saying, man, think about this. Like our story this year is great, but this will be the least talented team that Curt Cignetti ever has. And I'll grant you, that's probably true. Like, they're getting attention from a lot of guys that they never would have gotten attention from before. But I want to caution people. I don't think you'll ever have a better team in the purest sense of what a team is. Yeah. I don't think you'll ever have a better team anywhere than Indiana and Curt Cignetti were able to have this year. Because with all the talent that comes in, there are just different consequences to that. I remember listening to Saban when he was first at Alabama, those first couple of years, they get that first round of recruits through, and they go up against Tebow and Urban Meyer, and they fall just short one year. Then they beat him, and they win the title the next year. And people were saying, man, and now imagine how much more talented Alabama's going to be under Saban. They did go on to put many more talented teams than those early teams on the field. But if you listen to him talk about his time at Alabama, he always talks about the dynamics of that first team and how he was never really fully able to replicate that. So that's a catch-22. But then on the other side of it, Rich, they are going to be there because they are not a have-not. One of the big misnomers about Indiana is they're a have-not. They are not a have-not. They are a has-not. The trophy case is barren, so they have not done anything, but they are not a have-not. So as much as Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State are able to have juice in the talent acquisition space, Indiana, from this point moving forward, is able to stand shoulder to shoulder with them.
That's Josh Pate, I believe, a rising star at ESPN on college football with Rich Eisen. The point he makes about Alabama, that the first team, that's the worst they're going to be. Indiana saying, yeah, we're going to get better. You hope so, but not necessarily. You remember Deion Sanders in that first-year team that got so much attention and was selling out the stadium. They went to Oregon and got clobbered by Dan Lanning and Oregon, and they were happy to run up the score. And Lanning said, we're about winning. We're not about clicks. And since that season, Deion hadn't done much. And this past season, he won 3 games. So, beware of that. But I don't think that's going to happen with Indiana. I think that's going to be sustained. A good job by Tom Lavero here. I hadn't really thought of this in this way, but all this, the news of the week out of Ashburn is they've promoted David Blau, the quarterback's coach, to offensive coordinator, replacing Cliff Kingsbury. And so Tom asked somebody at the team, he said, what exactly did Blau do on game days as an invisible assistant, right? You never saw him. He was up in the booth, right? According to a Commander's spokesperson, this was Blau's duties as assistant quarterback's coach. Blau was up in the coach's booth, was essentially an extra set of eyes for Kingsbury. He would identify defensive structures and substitutions and call out trends and tendencies he saw from the defense. He was also up in the booth with Senior Vice President of Football Initiatives Dave Gardy, who he assisted with game management decisions on the offensive side of the ball. After Washington's quarterback's coach, Tafita Pritchard, was hired as the head coach at Stanford, Blau took over that job for the final 4 games of the 2025 season and was on the sidelines. And this is what he did in that job, according to the Commanders. As the interim quarterback's coach on the sidelines, he would conduct a post-series review of what happened with the quarterback and what to expect next. He also handled and assisted Kingsbury with the in-game adjustments as it applied to the offense and passing game on the sidelines. He had direct dialogue with the starting quarterback. So, okay, those are duties that he had. We'll see if he can take the next step up and be the play caller this upcoming season. All right, playoffs this weekend. Predictions, especially from somebody like me, mean nothing. But just looking at the matchups and watching these teams play, I think this is going to be a very unusual year. It's set up that you earn home field during the regular season so that when you get to this point in the year, home field means a lot, and that the numbers bear out that you're going to go further because you have home field. Well, it's also because you're a good team and you earn the home field. But I like 3 of the 4 road teams this week. Now, there are favorites, like, for example, Buffalo is a favorite on the road at Denver. I like the Bills to win. San Francisco is a 7-point underdog at Seattle, and Sam Darnold there's some issue now with an oblique. There's a possibility he may not play, but probably not much of one. I like Seattle to win at home regardless. And then on Sunday, Houston at New England. New England's favored by 3, and they're talking about snow, but the Houston defense is great. And then you got the Rams at Chicago in this brutally cold weather in Chicago, and I'm not buying the narrative, the Bears are used to it, and actually the Rams are favored by 3.5. So really the only underdog that I like is Houston, and Houston's playing on the road. So I think we're going to have matchups for the NFC Championship game of Houston versus the Rams, and then in the AFC, you're going to see Buffalo playing Seattle. And it may not happen that way at all, but as a card-carrying member of the sports radio fraternity, I think it's my duty to give you predictions for whatever they're worth. Bram is coming up next. I'll see you back here Monday morning at 9 a.m.